Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship? You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs. I've outrun Imperial starships. Not the local bulk cruisers, mind you. I'm talking about the big Carillion ships now. She's fast enough for you, old man. What's the cargo?
Only passengers. Myself, the boy, 2 droids, and no questions asked.
What is it, some kind of local trouble?
Let's just say we'd like to avoid any Imperial entanglements.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? And it's gonna cost you something extra. 10,000, all in advance. Don't everybody thank me at once.
10,000? I'd almost buy our own ship for that.
But who's gonna fly it, kid? You?
You bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself. We don't have to sit here and listen.
We can pay you 2,000 now, plus 15 when we reach Alderaan. That's no moon.
17. Okay, you guys got yourselves a ship. We'll leave as soon as you're ready. Docking Bay 94.
94.
What's up, shipbuilders? My first video I posted was my build of the Millennium Falcon. I initially made it because I wanted a record of the ship to rebuild it when I went into New Game Plus. I've learned much more about shipbuilding since then and thought I would revisit this build to see how it stands up today, if I could improve it, and what it would look like if I used different classes of engines. So to start, we're going to look at that initial build. There's a lot that this build gets right, and there's one critical piece that we're going to look to modify, but it does come with trade-offs. So to start, this uses the Pinch 8A reactor, which has 36 power. It's a bit below the max of 40, but it more than makes up for it with its hull, or health points, at 1,950, which far exceeds the next closest reactor at just over 1,300, making this the strongest reactor in terms of ship health in the game, and it isn't even close. Next, the grav drive. This is a very heavy grav drive in terms of mass, but it is a very heavy ship, and that's because my initial goal was to get as much cargo and shielded cargo while maintaining maximum mobility. I've since learned that the mobility statistic in this game is misleading and doesn't actually tell us anything about acceleration or our ability to change our ship's momentum. I've got a video on that specifically I'll link to. The mobility stat actually only refers to our ability to rotate or spin, but not actually change directions. Still, the ship does have a lot of mass, meaning we needed a large grav drive. For the shield, the Assurance SG-1800 shield, highest shield health in the game at 1600, which is the most important statistic with the shield. It does have a lot of mass, but again, we just talked about this ship and why we were okay with a lot of mass, at least at the time. Next, the engines. I used 5 of these SAL 6830s, and I used to be enamored with these. You could have up to 6 of them on your ship, and their thrust numbers were the highest in the game. But again, what I didn't realize at the time, back to that mobility statistic, is that their high mass negated so much of their strong thrust, putting them actually in the bottom 12 of all engines in the game in terms of their extra engine thrust in excess of their mass. Finally, a unique aspect of this ship configuration is that I actually hid an extra SA-4330 engine within the ship, just to get a bit more thrust to try to get even more cargo space while maintaining max mobility. And for the weapons, it's all particle beams. 3 Obliterator Alpha turrets in the standard positions, 3 Obliterator Auto Alpha beams, and 3 Exterminator 95 Auto Helion beams. In terms of weapons, this ship has the best of the best that also fit its aesthetic. So, how does it all come together? Well, it's honestly quite difficult to piece together as there are so many different pieces. in order to get that hunk of junk look. So as always, we'll do this in layers. The key thing to know from the start is that you want to make a trip to New Homestead on Titan to get 5 of the NG-20 landing gear, and then go to HopeTown and get 2 Hab Spines and 2 cross bracers. We'll see those in the middle layer of the ship. You'll then need to get your SAL 6830 engines from the Stroud-Eklund Staryard, and you'll want to get a couple larger 2x3 Habs from any of those places as well, just to take up space in one of the middle layers. To finish up with the rest of the components, you can go to your Outpost Landing Pad. So it's certainly a patchwork of ship parts, and we'll walk through layer by layer how they all come together. For the bottom layer, it's a lot of Stroud pieces surrounding the NG-20 landing gear. So you'll see we've got the nose cap. I do have a couple of these this Deimos piece to fit the weapons and an equipment mount, but otherwise Stroud cap A's flipped in various directions surrounding the NG-20 landing gear. I did have that Stroud side landing bay, just to give the nice landing bay look of the Falcon, and that Deimos belly aft, and just a bracer or the Deimos hole behind that, just to take up space. So a lot of Stroud pieces on the bottom here. You can get that from your Outpost Landing Pad or the Stroud-Eklund Staryard, obviously. The NG-20 landing gear being the key. And then that Stroud nose cap in the middle actually mounts a weapon underneath it, one of the turrets, so that's an important part. For our first middle layer, we've got 2 middle layers just because the SAL 6830 engines are kind of 2 connector points high. You'll see just a lot of different structural pieces, and then some larger 2x3 Habs just to take up space in the middle of the ship. Because otherwise, if you fill it up with individual kind of 1x1 components, you'll hit the part limiter in the ship builder pretty fast. And so having those bigger Habs is important here just to take up space, and this layer more or less creates kind of the main base of our ship and connects all the pieces together. I'm gonna move this one forward right there because the engines actually connect to the back, kind of like on that cargo piece there. So for our main middle layer, I'll say that side docker is another unique piece there. And then a bunch of other random pieces in the middle that basically hold our engines together on the back. We do have this 900T Helium 3 tank. It's the most efficient one in the game. Again, that just takes up space. A lot of these are to take up space. The orientation of the Habs I thought was important though, because those cross bracers and the Hab spines that connect the Habs together give kind of that tunnel look in the middle of the ship. So those are important. Now for the cockpit, I did go with that command bridge from Taiyo. You can go with a lesser version from your Outpost Landing Pad. If you want this higher version, you'll get a bit more cargo, but you'll have to go directly to Taiyo Astroneering and Neon. And you'll see the orientation, it actually sits up a little bit from the rest of the Habs. It means one more ladder in your ship to get to the cockpit, but I did that just for the overall look of the Falcon and where the cockpit sits. So sacrifices. So we'll select all of these parts and move these over. You can kind of see where they fit with the rest of the build. So many parts, right? Xbox kind of can't handle it. So here you can kind of see how the weapons are tucked in right in the middle. And then actually our reactor and grav drive will sit in that central channel there. And we'll actually do an interior walkthrough in a bit so you can see how those cross braces and Hab spines actually give a nice tunnel look on the inside of the Falcon. On the top, we actually got a couple of these HopeTech cap pieces. You can get those from your Outpost Landing Pad. Those just give that more hunk-of-junk look. I noticed in this video I had the 8Z reactor, not the 8A, so I wanted a little bit more power points instead of the health points. Again, there's a trade-off there. Pick whichever one you want. At the end of the day, I ended up going with the 8A version to get those extra health points. And just some more unique structural pieces on the back. So for a shopping list, I'll try and put that in the description with all of these ship parts because there are a lot. And I did have a scan jammer on the back there. You can get that from the Red Mile if you want to. You don't have to, but because this is a smuggling ship with a lot of shielded cargo, I did go to the Red Mile and buy that. So this will sit right in the middle and cap off the ship. You can see how we hid the weapons in there between the mandibles. And that'll do it for the C-Class build. You can see that SA-4330 just tucked in there. It's not actually glitched in, it does actually fit. And so that just gives us a bit more thrust, and we can get a bit more cargo that way. And still maintain max mobility. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a Class A version of this. And I'm going to call it a Class A because I'm really just swapping out the engines. Most of the components are actually the same. You could swap out the reactor, but I wanted to keep it because I really like this reactor for its health points. So we still got the Pinch 8A reactor. We can go with a lower grav drive because we're lowering our mass, and so I swapped out the grav drive. If you know I pick grav drives, it's just the grav drive with the lowest mass that gets you at least 28 light years of jump range. So that did it for us on this build. And then swapped out the 6830s for the SA-4330s. And so those give kind of a nice rounded look. You can still have up to 6 of them, so I've still got the extra one hidden underneath, like we always do. And then same shield, same weapon loadout, because I've got the same Class C reactor. We get to keep all of those, which I think is really important for this build. You still get your maximum kind of power output for your main components of the ship. So I'll show you how to convert the Class C ship here to a Class A. It's actually pretty simple to get those, swap those engines out. The main thing is because we're losing some maneuvering thrust from those SAL 6830s, if we still want to have a decent mobility number, we're going to have to cut out some cargo space. And so we'll do a little bit of that too, but that's up to you how deep of a cut you want to make. So to start, we're going to select all pieces on this top layer and just move them off to the side. We'll keep them, we'll move them back on in just a minute, but we're just going to select all those one by one and then grab them, shift them off to the side. We'll bring them back in just a second. We're going to do the same thing for this middle, I guess top middle layer, because we want to keep that, especially with all of those halves. Those are an important part of this ship. So we're going to select all of those and move those off to the side as well. Actually, before we do that, sorry, let's go ahead and swap the engines out. So let's delete these SAL 6830s. And we can keep the one here. That was actually a 4110, I think, an old build. I had that before I had unlocked the other one. So we'll grab the 4330s and slot those in. Now you can flip these into various kind of orientations. I went with this one. You can go with whatever you think looks best. So we'll put these in, and let's actually steal the colorway. So you'll notice the color I've got is mostly a white, but a little bit dirty orange in there. Again, piece of junk type of feel. And now let's go ahead and select this top middle layer. We'll need to get rid of this fuel because it takes up 2 by 2, so we'll just put lesser fuel in. And with our lower mass ship now, we don't need as much fuel anyway. And then we're going to get rid of some cargo eventually too. So we got that cargo piece back there. We'll remember that just to get our mobility back up. But we'll select all the pieces in this layer and move these off to the side. And what we're going to actually do is the lower middle layer, we're just going to delete all the pieces out of that. So that lower middle layer that has those 2x3 halves, we don't need that anymore because we don't have the bigger 6830 engines. We got these lower profile 4330 engines. So we don't need to fill up as much kind of interior space. I gotta select that equipment plate. It doesn't select when I do that. So we're gonna move all of this. There, we got it. Move this to the side, and then this lower middle layer, let's make sure we don't lose anything. Yeah, we'll just delete all of these pieces. We don't need them anymore. Save that weapon. I want to put that back on. All these pieces are taking up space. You'll see we're getting rid of some cargo here. That'll get our mobility back up a little bit. But we'll just clear this out. And I'm going to move these weapons off of the bottom layer. We'll probably put them back on, but just to make sure that they fit and it doesn't cause us any issues as we're trying to put this ship back together. We'll just move them for now. Get them out of the way. So again, the exact same bottom layer as our first configuration of this ship. No different. This middle nose cap flipped upside down. We can actually, that's where that other turret is mounted. So that has a weapon mount on it, and you can do underneath. Not very many pieces do have an underneath weapon mount, so that's important. I'm going to get rid of that cargo piece. Again, gets us more mobility. And that cargo is actually the most inefficient cargo in terms of cargo to mass in the game. So I'm just going to get rid of that. All right, so let's select all on this. Now our new and only middle layer. And actually, let's move these off. These kind of hang down a little bit. They might get in our way. They might not. So I'm just going to move them just to get our structural pieces on first. So select those. We'll put this right in the middle here. See how that lines up? So our engines line up with the very back of the bottom structural pieces. All right, just fits right in. I'm actually going to move this back, this cross brace, so I can get my weapons back on. So a little bit of a change there, but I can mount this piece, let's get my weapons. And now this top obliterator is a little too tall, so I'm going to take one of the exterminators and put it there instead. So I got 3 of those exterminators. Get rid of this one because you can only have up to 3. I'm going to select this top layer and put this on, and then we'll figure out how to get our weapons back on. So select all these pieces. Yep, got them all. And this will just slot right on the top. Right there. So we basically just flattened it a little more, which I actually like the look of better. And now we got to get our weapons back on. So let's get these weapon mounts. These should still be able to fit. Yep. So those will go on either side of the mandibles. And then we don't have room for this now, but we can put it underneath here. So they're all kind of central there for the kind of manually firing. And then this turret we'll put back on the side here next to the landing bay. And we'll orient that facing out. I might switch that to facing backwards later, but we'll see. Now our mobility is still low because we lost a lot of that maneuvering thrust. And the other thing I'll mention is sometimes when you take your ship apart like this, it'll give you a can't reach cockpit from landing bay. If that happens, delete the bridge and then select it from the part builder again and put it back on, put it back together. And that should get rid of that error For some reason, it doesn't like that with that extra hab on top. And then one thing that'll help our mobility is to get a lighter grav drive. We don't need that super heavy, super powerful grav drive anymore. So again, we're just going to sort through this and look for one that gets us at least 28 light years. That's lightweight. So this Aurora grav drive does that. So we'll put that here instead. That saves us quite a bit of mass. And then we'll probably need, this big galleon cargo hold. Probably need to get rid of that. Fill that in with a mid-bracer. Again, up to you how much you value mobility. The Falcon, while faster than light speed, its sublight speed isn't all that fast, technically speaking, so up to you where you go with this. Another way to get more mobility, so we've got some cargo hidden under here. We could opt to get rid of one of those, or I think we've got another, big galleon piece here. Get rid of that. That brings our mobility up quite a bit. We'll fill that in with a bracer. So, again, completely up to you how far you want to go with cargo versus mobility here. We could put one more on. Again, we're still at 91. I don't know, might fiddle with that some more. But overall, I actually think I like the look of this better. Our top speed is quite a bit better. Going from having Class C engines gives us a top speed of 130. Class A bumps it up to 150, so it's a big jump. You really notice that in combat. Plus, the actual acceleration of this ship is much better than the Class C version, so that's kind of a hidden statistic. But those SAL 6830s do not have a good thrust to mass ratio. They have a good maneuvering thrust to mass. Well, actually it's not that great either, but at least it bumps up your mobility, but your mobility, as we learned, does not equate to acceleration. So this version with these A-class engines just maneuvers altogether so much better. And we've still got Class C reactor, Class C shield, Class C weapons, so incredibly powerful ship. But obviously comes at a cost of less cargo space, so up to you which version you prefer. To me, this one's more fun to fly. But let's take a look at the interior. So this was actually requested on my last video. And again, with those cross bracers and hab spines, it's actually got a good Falcon feel. So come in the side landing bay, which is pretty perfect for the roleplay of the Falcon. The one problem here is we've got a ladder to get us up to kind of the main middle layer of the ship. So immediately one ladder. So we'll just boost up that. And right into the engineering bay here. This would be kind of the back right of the ship. Now go through our first cross bracer here into our living quarters. Now you could argue, I don't know if technically this is the exact layout. There's our docking bay door. If this is the exact layout of the Millennium Falcon, technically speaking, but you know, mix and match, do what works best for you. Here we've got one of those spines, so another tunnel into our workshop. I feel like every ship that has cargo space should probably have a workshop. Another cross bracer into our computer core. And then this hab spine brings us back to where we started, the engineering bay and the landing bay. But off to this side, if we come down this cross bracer, we'll get to our control station. So it gets us some extra crew slots. And then here's that kind of quirky ladder that gets us up to the cockpit. So one more door and we're into the cockpit, which I think is a good cockpit for the Falcon. Now let's take a look at how this does at Kryx on very hard difficulty. And pay attention to those backward facing turrets and how much of a help those provide. one last variation to share with y'all. I wanted to see if we couldn't get Class B engines on this ship. But for all Class B engines, the max you're allowed is up to 4. And so just for the look of this ship, it didn't really fit that well. But I wanted to try because it would give us a little extra thrust to give us a bit more cargo and keep our maneuvering ability up. So these SEA 5660s, these are some of the best engines in the game in terms of their thrust to mass and maneuvering thrust to mass. You can only have up to 4 of them though. And so it makes the look of this ship just a little bit off in my opinion. Now we could still take one of them and hide it underneath like we did with the SA 4330s. We could fit one in there so we could get the max 4, and that would really give us a boost to our potential cargo space while maintaining max mobility. But again, I'm just not totally sold on the look. So we'll make a little room moving that cargo space around. We can fit one in there and we can put these parts back on. And so you see we can make it work. Now I'm at the Stroud Staryard, and so I don't have all the structural pieces. I think having these Nova cowlings on the side might look a bit better. I need to go to my Outpost Landing Pad to get extra of those. We can steal some from the front just to see what the profile would look like. I do like that a bit better, but I think it's just missing having those extra couple engines on the side. It's just not quite right. So, total personal preference. So while you're getting a little bit extra maneuvering thrust to mass, you're getting a lower top speed, and that coupled with just the look of this ship, not quite worth it. But there is an alternative. We wouldn't have to go with all Class B engines. So what we could do is, because those SA 4330s only use 2 power, we could keep 3 of them, so that uses 6. And we could swap out 3, and then put on 2 SA 5660s. So in total, we're still within our 12 engine power allocation. But we're getting a bit more thrust to mass doing it this way. It's not a lot. In total, we probably gained about 100 in mass that we could then reallocate to cargo and still keep our top mobility. Our top speed is down a little bit to 140. So again, is that worth it or not? And then if you really wanted to go all the way with this build, you'd need to swap out your reactor for a Class B reactor. So, change out that pinch 8A or 8Z for a Class B reactor. Now, the best Class B is the 104DS. That gives you 39 power points, so pretty darn good reactor for Class B. Saves you a lot of mass too. Now you're losing a lot of health points. You're down to 1100 from the 1900 of the pinch 8A. But now that we're at Class B, we've got to get rid of everything else that's Class C. So a few of our weapons, our shield. And so that's going to really cause us to have to rethink this ship. It can be done. So, we'll clear out all our weapons that are Class C. You'll see that gets rid of all of our ship errors. And then we'll go back and look at exactly what we can put on. So from a turret perspective, there's really 2 good options when we look at particle beam turrets. There's the Exterminator 75 auto neutron turrets. These are pretty darn good for being Class B turrets, and you can have up to 3 of them. Or there's the PBO 100 auto neutron turrets. You can have up to 4 of those. The total DPS for each of these is pretty darn close, so pick whichever one you would like the best. To approximate what we had before, I'm going to go with the Eradicators. Those are just close in look and feel to the Obliterators that we used to have, and we can have 3 of them. So we'll put one on the top, we'll put one down by the landing bay, and one on the bottom, and we'll have them all face backwards, just to get anything that might be flying behind us, and especially now that our top speed is a bit slower. And for our final weapon slot, I think we'll probably go with the tried and true Vanguard Obliterator auto projectors. You can have up to 6 of these things. Their fire rate is incredibly fast. And so they're just one of the best weapons in the game. And we can put a bunch of these on these weapon mounts here, and we can still have up to 2 more of them. So maybe just on the top and bottom of these, you know, those Deimos pieces, or maybe on the Stroud nose caps, just to have what looks like a steady beam of particle energy coming out from the center of the ship. So that replaces our weapons. We can go ahead and assign those, get rid of those errors in the shipbuilder. And then we really just need a shield. And so a Class B shield, our best options are either the Vanguard Bulwark shield. It's a Class B shield, very, very lightweight for its health points. It's got 1450. Or the 28T Defender is a good option as well. A little bit more shield health, 1500, but a bit more mass as well. So up to you which one you choose. This one is a side mount, and I can actually hide it underneath, which I kind of like, because otherwise I don't think it would really fit the look of the Falcon. And then we'd probably just go to our Outpost Landing Pad and get a little tower to put on that spot where our shield used to be for the dish look. And that's going to wrap up this build and the 3 different variations that you can have with engine class and what that impacts. Ultimately, I do think I like flying the Class A SA 4330s a little bit better. But if you want all of that cargo space, obviously the SAL 6830s are the way to go, even though you're going to be slow as molasses. Hope you enjoy, and as always, keep building.